High Admiral Kane Morrison stood on the bridge of the massive starship Dominion's Edge. The ship was the largest in the Galactic Empire's fleet. It stretched for miles and carried enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Morrison had commanded this vessel for 10 years, and in that time, he had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. The bridge was filled with the soft hum of computers and the quiet voices of his crew. Officers moved between workstations, checking readings and preparing reports. Morrison felt proud as he watched them work. The Empire was strong, and his fleet was the strongest part of it. Captain Lisa Brooks walked up to Morrison with a worried look on her face. She carried a datapad in her hands. Brooks had served as his tactical advisor for 5 years. She was smart and careful, which made her valuable. But sometimes Morrison thought she worried too much. "Admiral," Brooks said, "we have received a message. It came from the edge of known space." Morrison turned to face her. "What kind of message?" "It's from the Keepers of the Void, sir." Morrison raised an eyebrow. The Keepers were ancient beings that most people thought were just stories. They were said to be older than the Empire itself. Some claimed they were older than the stars. Morrison had never seen one, and he wasn't sure they really existed. "The Keepers?" Morrison asked. "Are you certain?" Brooks nodded and handed him the datapad. "The message came through on frequencies we've never seen before. Our computers can barely understand it, but the translation is clear enough." Morrison looked at the pad. The text was strange, written in symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. But somehow, he could read the words. "To the Fourth Galactic Empire. We are the Keepers of the Void. We have watched the rise and fall of civilizations for millions of years. We have seen empires that spanned entire galaxies. We have watched them grow strong and proud. We have also watched them fall. You expand your territory quickly. You take world after world. This is not unusual. But you approach a system that must remain untouched. In the outer rim, there is a small blue world called Earth. This planet is home to beings called humans. We warn you now. Do not go to this world. Do not send your ships there. Do not attempt to conquer the humans. Earth is a forbidden zone. 3 galactic empires came before yours. Each was warned about Earth. Each ignored our warning. Each empire is now gone. The humans seem weak. Their technology appears simple. This is what makes them dangerous. They are not what they appear to be. They have survived things that would destroy other species. They have learned to adapt in ways you cannot imagine. We give you this warning freely. We ask nothing in return except that you listen. Stay away from Earth. Your empire will last longer if you do." Morrison finished reading and handed the pad back to Brooks. He almost laughed. "This is supposed to frighten me? Warnings about primitive humans?" "Sir," Brooks said carefully, "perhaps we should consider their advice. 3 previous empires. 3 previous empires were weak," Morrison interrupted. "Look around you, Captain. Look at this ship. Look at our fleet. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Our armies are unstoppable." Brooks looked uncomfortable. "The message seems genuine, Admiral. The Keepers have never been known to lie." Morrison walked to the large window that showed the stars ahead of them. The Empire's territory stretched in all directions. Millions of worlds paid tribute to the Emperor. Billions of beings served the Empire's will. The thought that some primitive planet could threaten all of this seemed ridiculous. "Tell me about this Earth," Morrison said. Brooks checked her data. Pad. "It's in a system called Sol, located in the Outer Rim territories. Long-range scans show it's a water world with one large moon. The inhabitants appear to have basic space travel. They've barely left their own system." "Basic space travel?" Morrison repeated. "And the Keepers think these humans are dangerous?" "The message was very specific about 3 previous empires, sir." Morrison turned back to face his crew. Officers continued their work, unaware of the conversation. The bridge felt solid and real around him. This was power. This was strength. Not some mysterious warning from ancient beings that might not even exist. "Captain Brooks," Morrison said, "how many worlds have we conquered in the past year?" 17, sir. "And how many of those worlds warned us to stay away?" Brooks thought for a moment. "Most of them, sir." "Exactly. Every species thinks they're special. Every world believes it can resist the Empire. They all make threats. They all fail." Morrison crossed his arms. "These humans are no different." "But, sir," Brooks tried again, "the Keepers mentioned that 3 entire empires are gone." "Yes." Morrison waved his hand dismissively. "Empires fall, Captain. It's the way of things. They fall because they become weak. They fall because they stop expanding. They fall because they listen to warnings instead of taking action." Brooks looked down at her datapad. Morrison could see she wanted to argue more, but she knew better. The Admiral had made his decision. "Set course for the Sol system," Morrison ordered. "Sir?" The navigation officer looked surprised. "You heard me. The Sol system, this Earth that the Keepers are so worried about." Morrison smiled. "We'll see for ourselves what makes these humans so special." Brooks stepped closer to Morrison. "Admiral, perhaps we should send scouts first. Gather more information before we commit the full fleet." Morrison considered this. It wasn't a bad idea. He always preferred to know what he was facing before a battle. But something about the Keeper's warning annoyed him. The idea that his empire should fear some primitive world in the Outer Rim felt insulting. "Very well," Morrison said. "Send Commander Walsh and his advance squadron. Have them assess the situation and report back." "Yes, sir." Brooks seemed relieved. Morrison returned to looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a small blue planet that ancient beings feared. Soon he would discover what made Earth so special, and then, like every other world that had stood against the Empire, it would fall. The Admiral had no way of knowing that his decision would change everything. He couldn't know that the Keeper's warning was not meant to protect the Empire from humans, but to protect humans from making another empire disappear forever. Commander Ryan Walsh gripped the arms of his command chair as the Imperial spear dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The stars shifted from streaks of light back to steady points. Around him, his bridge crew worked quickly to get their bearings. In the new system. "Report," Walsh ordered. Lieutenant Commander Jake Peterson checked his instruments. "We've arrived at the Sol system, sir. All ships in the squadron have made the jump successfully." Walsh nodded. He commanded 12 ships, all fast and well-armed scouts. Admiral Morrison had chosen them to be the first Imperial forces to see this mysterious Earth. Walsh had read the Keeper's warning, but like most Imperial officers, he found it hard to believe. "What do the sensors show?" Walsh asked. Peterson's fingers moved over his controls. "The system has 8 planets, sir. The 3rd planet from the star appears to be Earth. It's interesting." "How so?" Well, sir, the Keepers called these humans primitive, but I'm seeing artificial structures throughout the system. The fourth planet, Mars, shows signs of colonization. There are mining operations in the asteroid belt between the fourth and fifth planets. Walsh felt a small surprise. Colonizing other planets wasn't something primitive species usually did. What about ships? Do you see any human vessels? Yes, sir. Multiple contacts. They appear to be watching us. This caught Walsh's attention. Watching us. The human ships have taken positions around our squadron, sir. They're not moving to attack, but they're definitely aware of our presence. Walsh stood up and walked to the main display screen. It showed the Sol system with small dots representing ships and space stations. The human vessels were positioned in a wide circle around his squadron. It looked almost like they had been expecting visitors. How many ships? Walsh asked. 37, sir. They're smaller than our vessels, but they're armed. Before Walsh could respond, the communications officer raised his hand. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human ships. Put it on screen. The display changed to show the bridge of a human ship. A woman in a blue uniform sat in the command chair. She had short brown hair and calm eyes. Behind her, Walsh could see other humans working at various stations. They looked remarkably similar to several species the Empire had encountered before. This is Colonel Amy Foster of Earth Defense Command, the woman said. Her voice was steady and professional. You have entered human space without permission. State your intentions. Walsh was impressed despite himself. The human showed no fear, even though his ships were clearly larger and more advanced. I am Commander Ryan Walsh of the Galactic Empire. We come to establish contact with your species. Colonel, Foster's expression didn't change. The Galactic Empire. Yes, we've been monitoring your expansion for some time. We know why you're here. This surprised Walsh. You've been monitoring us? Of course. Did you think we wouldn't notice an empire conquering its way across the galaxy? Foster leaned forward slightly. Commander Walsh, your empire has a choice to make. You can leave our system peacefully, or you can face the consequences of ignoring our sovereignty. Walsh felt confused. Most species either welcomed the Empire or immediately attacked when they saw Imperial ships. This calm conversation was unusual. Colonel Foster, I think you may not understand the situation. The Galactic Empire controls over 1,000 worlds. We have resources and technology beyond your imagination. Foster nodded. We're aware of your capabilities, Commander. We're also aware that you received a warning from the Keepers of the Void. You were told to stay away from Earth. You know about the Keeper's message? We know many things, Commander Walsh. What's important now is this. You have 36 hours to leave our system. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving Walsh staring at an empty screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused and concerned. Sir, Peterson said quietly, should we consider their request? Walsh thought about it. The humans seemed remarkably well informed. They knew about the Empire's expansion and the Keeper's warning. They had ships positioned throughout their system as if they had been expecting this encounter. Most unusual of all, they showed no fear. Communications, Walsh ordered. Send a message to Admiral Morrison. Inform him that the humans are more advanced than expected. They have colonies throughout their system and appear to have been monitoring our Empire's activities. Yes, sir. Walsh returned to his command chair. Through the main window, he could see several human ships in the distance. They maintained their positions, neither approaching nor retreating. It was like they were simply waiting. Peterson, Walsh, said, "What do our sensors tell us about human technology?" Peterson worked at his console for several minutes before responding. "It's difficult to assess, sir. Their ships use different principles than ours. Where we use energy shields and plasma weapons, they seem to prefer kinetic weapons and armor plating." "Primitive?" "Not exactly, sir. Different. Their approach is less elegant, but appears quite effective. And, sir, there's something else." "What?" "Our long-range sensors are detecting additional ships further out in the system. Many more ships. It's possible the humans have been hiding their true numbers." Walsh felt the first stirring of real concern. "How many more ships?" "Unknown, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology that our sensors can barely detect, but based on what we can see, potentially hundreds." The bridge fell silent. Walsh had expected to find a primitive world with basic space travel. Instead, he was looking at a species that had colonized their entire system, had been monitoring the Empire's expansion, and possessed enough ships to potentially outnumber his squadron many times over. "Sir," the communications officer said, "message from Admiral Morrison." "Put it through." Morrison's voice came through the speakers. "Commander Walsh, report on the situation." "Admiral, the humans are more advanced than we anticipated. They have colonies throughout their system and a significant military presence. They've given us 36 hours to leave." Morrison's laugh came clearly through the speakers. 36 hours? How generous of them. What do you estimate their capabilities to be? Walsh looked around his bridge. His officers were listening carefully. "Sir, I recommend caution. These humans appear to have been preparing for contact with us. They show no fear and seem confident in their abilities." "Commander, you have 12 of the Empire's finest ships. Are you telling me you're concerned about some primitive humans?" "Sir, they may not be as primitive as we thought." There was a pause before Morrison responded. "Very well, Commander. Maintain your position and continue gathering intelligence. I'm bringing the main fleet to your location. We'll see how confident these humans remain when they face the full might of the Empire." The transmission ended. Walsh looked out at the human ships, still maintaining their watch around his squadron. Colonel Foster had been calm and professional, but there had been something in her eyes. Not fear, but a kind of patient certainty, like she knew something he didn't. Walsh had a growing feeling that Admiral Morrison was making a serious mistake. But orders were orders, and the Empire's fleet was already on its way to Earth. Admiral Morrison's massive fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 300 ships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the Empire's silver and gold colors. The Dominion's edge led. Them, its weapons powered and ready for battle. Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display show the positions of human ships throughout the system. Commander Walsh had been right about one thing. There were many more human vessels than first expected. But Morrison wasn't impressed. Numbers meant little when facing superior technology. "General Stone," Morrison called to his ground forces commander. "What do you think of our new opponents?" General Marcus Stone stood at the tactical station, studying the human formations. He was a veteran of dozens of planetary conquests, and his scarred face showed the experience of many battles. "They're positioned defensively, Admiral, classical formations around their major population centers and industrial areas." "Classical and predictable," Morrison agreed. "Captain Brooks, what does our intelligence tell us about human capabilities?" Brooks consulted her data pad, but her voice carried a note of caution. Admiral, the humans have surprised us several times already. Their technology may be different from ours, but it appears effective. And their intelligence about our empire suggests they've been preparing for this encounter. Morrison waved dismissively. Preparation means nothing against overwhelming force, Captain. How many ships do they have in total? Current estimates suggest between 400 and 500 vessels, sir. And we have 300 of the Empire's finest warships. Each of our vessels is worth 10 of theirs. Morrison smiled confidently. The outcome is inevitable. Lieutenant Commander Peterson, who had transferred from Walsh's ship to provide tactical analysis, cleared his throat. Admiral, if I may, the humans have shown unusual confidence. Colonel Foster seemed certain that we would leave their system voluntarily. Did she? Morrison's smile widened. How delightfully naive. General Stone, are your troops ready for planetary assault? Yes, sir. 50,000 soldiers across 100 transport ships, the best the Empire has to offer. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Communications. Open a channel to the human leadership. Channel open, sir. The main screen displayed the bridge of a human command ship. This time, instead of Colonel Foster, Morrison faced an older woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with no elaborate decorations. Behind her, Morrison could see other humans working calmly at their stations. I am Dr. Helen Carter, speaking for Earth's unified government, the woman said. You must be Admiral Morrison. I am. Dr. Carter, I'm here to offer your species a choice. Surrender now, and your people will be integrated into the Galactic Empire as citizens. Resist, and your world will be conquered by force. Dr. Carter's expression remained calm. Admiral, we appreciate your offer, but we must decline. Earth and human space will remain independent. Morrison felt amused by her politeness. Dr. Carter, I don't think you understand the situation. I have 300 warships at my disposal. Each ship carries weapons that could destroy your largest cities. Your resistance would be brief and costly. We understand your capabilities quite well, Admiral, but you seem to misunderstand ours. Enlighten me. Dr. Carter leaned back in her chair. Admiral Morrison, your empire has conquered many worlds, but those worlds fought you using your own rules. They met your fleets in open space. They tried to match your technology with inferior versions of the same concepts. And they lost because they were inferior. They lost because they thought like you do. Dr. Carter's voice remained pleasant. Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that the strongest army doesn't always win. Sometimes the smartest one does. Morrison felt his patience growing thin. Are you trying to threaten me with superior tactics? I'm trying to give you the same warning the Keepers of the Void already provided. Leave our system, Admiral. Your empire will last longer if you do. The transmission ended before Morrison could respond. He stared at the blank screen, feeling both annoyed and puzzled. The human leader had shown the same calm confidence as Colonel Foster. They acted like they held some kind of advantage, which seemed impossible. General Stone, Morrison said, what did you think of that conversation? Stone rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The humans seem very confident, sir. That usually means one of two things. They're either completely insane or they know something we don't. And which do you think it is? Based on their behavior so far, they know something we don't. Morrison turned to Captain Brooks. Your assessment? I agree with General Stone, sir. The humans have been preparing for this encounter. They knew about our empire, our expansion, even the Keeper's warning. That level of intelligence gathering suggests significant capabilities. Morrison felt frustrated. His officers were beginning to sound like they believed the human threats. "Captain, we have the most advanced fleet in known space. Our energy shields can deflect any kinetic weapon. Our plasma cannons can burn through any armor. What possible advantage could these humans have?" "I don't know, sir, but I recommend caution." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him carefully, waiting for orders. These were experienced officers who had served with him through many successful campaigns. If they were expressing doubts, perhaps he should listen. But then Morrison remembered the Emperor's words when he had been given this mission. The Empire must continue to expand. Showing weakness or hesitation would encourage other species to resist. The humans had to be conquered quickly and decisively to maintain the Empire's reputation. "General Stone," Morrison ordered, "prepare your forces for immediate assault. Captain Brooks, ready the fleet for attack formation." "Sir," Brooks said carefully, "perhaps we should study the humans' defenses more thoroughly before attacking. We've studied enough. The humans have had their chance to surrender. Now they'll learn what happens when a primitive species challenges the Galactic Empire." Morrison watched as his orders were carried out. His ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging for battle. Throughout the Sol system, human ships waited in their defensive positions, showing no signs of retreat or panic. As the Imperial fleet prepared to attack, Morrison felt completely confident in the outcome. His ships were superior in every way. His soldiers were the best trained in the galaxy. The humans might have some clever tactics, but tactics couldn't overcome such a massive technological advantage. Morrison had no way of knowing that the humans had been counting on exactly this kind of thinking. Earth's leaders had studied every Imperial conquest, analyzing how the Empire fought and what assumptions they made about their enemies. The humans had spent decades preparing for this moment, and every aspect of their defense had been designed to take advantage of Imperial arrogance. The battle was about to begin, and Admiral Morrison was already losing. The first shots of the battle came from the Imperial fleet. Bright beams of plasma energy streaked across space toward human positions near Mars. Admiral Morrison watched from his bridge as the weapons struck their targets, expecting to see human ships explode in brilliant flashes. Instead, the human vessels simply weren't there anymore. "What happened?" Morrison demanded. Captain Brooks checked her instruments frantically. "Sir, the human ships moved just before our weapons reached them. They're using some kind of rapid maneuvering system. Impossible! No ship can change course that quickly." But even as Morrison spoke, he could see human ships appearing and disappearing across the tactical display. They would emerge from behind. Asteroids, fire quick bursts from their kinetic weapons, then vanish again behind cover. The attacks did little damage to Imperial shields, but they were confusing and frustrating. "Admiral," called the tactical officer, "the humans are not fighting like any enemy we've encountered before." Morrison could see that for himself. Every species the Empire had conquered fought in predictable ways. They formed battle lines, matched weapon for weapon, tried to prove they were stronger than Imperial forces. The humans seemed to be doing everything wrong, and somehow making it work. Admiral Bobby Mitchell commanded the human space forces from his flagship, the Earth's Resolve. Unlike the massive Imperial vessels, Mitchell's ship was smaller, faster, and built for quick strikes, rather than sustained combat. Around him, his officers coordinated attacks across the entire Sol system. Status report, Mitchell ordered. Commander Kelly Wright, his tactical officer, consulted her displays. Phase 1 is complete, sir. Imperial forces have committed to traditional attack formations. They're trying to engage our main battle groups directly. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. Mitchell's plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. Instead of meeting the Imperial fleet in open battle, human forces would use the Sol system itself as a weapon. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris had been mapped and prepared for this moment. Throughout the system, human ships began implementing tactics that the Empire had never seen before. Small groups of fighters would attack Imperial vessels, then retreat into asteroid fields where the larger enemy ships couldn't follow. When Imperial forces tried to pursue, they found themselves facing carefully positioned minefields and hidden weapons platforms. Captain Troy Adams led the human ground defense forces from a command center deep beneath Earth's surface. His screen showed Imperial troop transports approaching Earth's atmosphere, ready to begin planetary assault. "Are the surface defenses ready?" Adams asked. "Yes, sir," replied Lieutenant Nina Clark. "Every major city has been evacuated to underground shelters. Surface installations are unmanned but operational." Adams nodded. The humans had learned from studying Imperial conquests that most species tried to defend their cities and population centers directly. This always failed because Imperial firepower was simply too strong, so Earth had taken a different approach. When Imperial troops landed on Earth's surface, they found empty cities and abandoned military bases. Everything appeared to have been evacuated in panic. The soldiers moved through deserted streets expecting desperate resistance that never came. General Stone commanded the Imperial ground assault from his command ship in orbit. "Report from the surface teams," he ordered. "Sir, major population centers appear to be abandoned. Our forces are encountering minimal resistance." "Minimal resistance? What kind of resistance?" "Small groups of human soldiers, sir. They appear, briefly, engage our forces, then disappear. Our troops can't seem to locate their main defensive positions." Stone frowned. This wasn't how planetary conquests usually worked. Most species defended their cities with everything they had. The humans seemed to be playing some kind of game. "Order all ground units to secure the major cities," Stone commanded. "If the humans want to hide, we'll force them to come out and fight." But as Imperial troops moved deeper into human territory, the real battle began. Human soldiers appeared. From underground tunnels, hit Imperial forces with precise attacks, then vanished again. The humans knew every street, every building, every hiding place. They had turned their own world into a maze that trapped the invaders. Sergeant Tim Clark led a human special forces team through the tunnels beneath New York City. His men carried weapons that had been specifically designed to defeat Imperial armor. They moved quietly through passages that connected to the surface at hundreds of points. "Target approaching," whispered one of his soldiers. Through a carefully concealed opening, Clark could see an Imperial patrol moving down a main street. The aliens walked confidently, their energy weapons ready, but not particularly alert. They clearly expected the humans to fight like every other species, with honor and desperation. Clark's team opened fire with armor-piercing rounds that punched through Imperial shields like they weren't there. 3 enemy soldiers fell before the others could react. By the time the Imperial troops turned to return fire, the humans had already disappeared back into their tunnels. In space, the battle was going equally badly for the Empire. Admiral Morrison watched his tactical display with growing frustration as human ships continued their hit-and-run tactics. Every time his forces tried to engage the enemy directly, the humans would slip away and attack from a different direction. "Admiral," Captain Brooks reported, "we've lost 17 ships so far." 17 ships? How is that possible? Our shields should deflect their primitive weapons. "Sir, the humans aren't using energy weapons like we expected. They're using mass. Drivers. Kinetic weapons that fire solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Our shields are designed to deflect energy, not physical impacts." Morrison felt a chill of understanding. The Empire's technology was superior in every way, except that it had been designed to fight enemies who used the same basic principles. The humans fought with completely different methods, making Imperial advantages nearly useless. "Sir," the communications officer called, "we're receiving reports from ground forces. General Stone requests immediate support." "What's the situation?" "Imperial troops are taking heavy casualties, sir. The humans are using guerrilla tactics. They attack from concealed positions, then disappear before our forces can respond." Morrison slammed his fist on his command chair. "This is impossible. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior training. How are these primitives giving us such trouble?" Captain Brooks looked at the tactical display thoughtfully. "Admiral, I don't think they're primitives. I think they've been studying us for a long time. They know exactly how we fight, and they've designed their entire defense to counter our methods." As if to prove her point, a group of human ships suddenly appeared from behind Earth's moon. They had somehow hidden there without being detected, and now they launched a coordinated attack on the Imperial fleet's rear guard. The surprise assault destroyed 5 Imperial vessels before they could react. Morrison realized that he was facing something the Empire had never encountered before. An enemy that refused to fight fair. The humans weren't trying to prove they were stronger or more advanced. They were simply trying to win, using whatever methods worked best. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Admiral Morrison began to understand why the Keepers had warned his empire to stay away. These humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something far more dangerous. Survivors who had learned that the only rule in war was victory. Deep in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Agent Nina Clark stood before a massive display showing the entire Sol system. The screen was filled with moving dots representing ships, stations, and weapons platforms. To most observers, the battle looked chaotic. To Clark, it looked exactly like the plan she had helped create 15 years ago. "Phase 3 is ready to begin," she reported to the assembled commanders. Admiral Mitchell nodded from his position at the central command station. "Excellent work, Nina. Begin the reveal." What Admiral Morrison didn't know was that the Sol system had been transformed into the largest military trap in human history. For decades, humans had been preparing for the day when a galactic empire would come to conquer them. They had studied every Imperial conquest, analyzed every battle tactic, and designed their defenses specifically to counter Imperial methods. The asteroids that Imperial ships had been using for cover weren't natural formations. They were hollowed out, weapons platforms, their surfaces carefully disguised to look like ordinary space rocks. The mining operations that Commander Walsh had detected were actually massive military installations, capable of building and repairing warships faster than the Empire could destroy them. Clark's fingers moved over her control panel and across. The system, the real battle began. The first surprise came near Jupiter, where Imperial forces had been chasing human ships through the asteroid belt. Suddenly, the asteroids themselves opened fire. Hidden plasma cannons and rail guns emerged from carefully concealed positions, catching the Imperial vessels in a devastating crossfire. Admiral Morrison watched in shock as 12 of his ships were destroyed in minutes. How is this possible? Those were asteroids. Captain Brooks was studying her sensor readings with amazement. Sir, they're not asteroids. They're artificial constructs designed to mimic asteroid signatures. The humans have weaponized their entire system. Before Morrison could respond, more surprises revealed themselves. The mining stations in the asteroid belt suddenly unfolded, like mechanical flowers, revealing themselves to be massive shipyards. Hundreds of human vessels that had been hidden inside began emerging, fresh and ready for battle. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Peterson. "They've been building ships inside fake mining operations. How long have they been preparing for this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Helen Carter appeared on the main screen again, but this time she was broadcasting to both fleets simultaneously. "Admiral Morrison," she said calmly, "you're probably wondering how we managed to hide so much from your sensors. The answer is simple. We've been watching your empire for over 50 years. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. 50 years? When your empire first began expanding in our direction, we started monitoring your communications. We studied your conquest patterns, your technology, your military tactics. We knew you would eventually reach Earth, so we began preparing." On screens throughout both fleets, Dr. Carter continued her explanation. "We learned that your empire always underestimates opponents who appear primitive. You assume that less advanced technology means less capability. This assumption has served you well against species who tried to match your technology directly, ARC." Smiled as she watched Imperial ships beginning to panic. "Phase 3 was working perfectly. But humans have learned something different," Dr. Carter continued. "We learned that the best way to defeat a superior enemy is to make them fight on your terms, not theirs. So we built our entire defense around that principle." Admiral Morrison was beginning to understand the scope of the trap he had walked into. "Captain Brooks, how many additional human ships are we now detecting?" Brooks was rapidly checking her instruments. "Sir, the count is climbing rapidly. It appears the humans have been hiding vessels throughout their system. Current estimate, over 800 ships, sir." 800? Morrison felt his confidence cracking. But the surprises weren't finished. On Mars, the Imperial ground forces suddenly found themselves under attack from completely unexpected directions. What had appeared to be Martian mountains were actually massive weapons installations. The planet's surface opened up to reveal underground hangars filled with human aircraft and ground vehicles. General Stone contacted Morrison with panic in his voice. "Admiral, the entire planet of Mars is a fortress. The surface installations we thought were mining operations are actually weapons emplacements. My forces are being attacked from every direction." Engineer Sam Porter coordinated the Mars defense from a command center built deep inside Olympus Mons, the largest mountain on Mars. Around him, technicians monitored hundreds of concealed weapon systems that were now emerging from their hiding places. "Status on the surface battle?" Porter asked. "Imperial forces are in full retreat, sir. They're attempting to reach their landing ships, but we're hitting them from positions they didn't know existed." Porter nodded with satisfaction. The humans had spent decades hollowing out Mars, turning the entire planet into a fortress world. Every major geographical feature concealed weapons or soldiers. The Imperial troops had landed expecting to fight a few scattered defenders. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire planet. Back in space, Admiral Morrison was discovering that his problems were just beginning. The human ships weren't just more numerous than expected. They were fighting with coordination that seemed impossible. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the human ships are operating with perfect coordination. across the entire system. It's like they're all controlled by a single mind. The explanation came from Dr. Carter, still broadcasting to both fleets. Admiral, you're seeing the result of 50 years of preparation. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier in this system has been trained to work together. We've practiced this battle thousands of times in simulation. Agent Clark activated the next phase of the plan. Across the system, space stations that had appeared to be civilian research facilities began transforming. Solar collectors unfolded into massive sensor arrays. Communication relays revealed themselves to be powerful jamming devices. What had looked like peaceful scientific installations were actually military command and control centers. We know exactly how your empire fights, Dr. Carter continued. You rely on superior technology and overwhelming force. You assume your enemies will panic when faced with your power, but humans have learned not to panic. We've learned to prepare. Morrison realized that everything he thought he knew about this battle had been wrong. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by the Imperial invasion. They had been expecting it, planning for it, preparing for it for decades. Admiral, Captain Brooks said quietly, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans have weapons platforms we never detected, hidden bases, reserve fleets. Sir, I think we need to consider retreat. Morrison looked at the tactical display. His 300 ships were now facing over 800 human vessels, plus planet-based weapons, plus hidden installations throughout the system. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a military fortress. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Morrison began to understand what it meant to be outmaneuvered by a supposedly inferior enemy. The humans hadn't just prepared for this battle. They had prepared to win it. Dr. Carter's final words echoed across both fleets. You were warned to stay away from Earth, Admiral Morrison. Now you understand why. Dr. Carl Johnson worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the Human Research Station Innovation. Around him, teams of engineers and scientists studied pieces of captured Imperial technology. Johnson had been waiting for this moment for years, the chance to examine alien technology up close. How long until we have results? Asked Admiral Mitchell through the communications link. Johnson looked up from the Imperial plasma cannon he was dissecting. Give me 6 hours, Admiral. Maybe less. 6 hours to reverse engineer technology that had taken the Empire centuries to develop. Most species would consider it impossible, but Johnson had advantages that most species lacked. He had been preparing for this moment for decades, and he understood something about human psychology that aliens often missed. Humans were natural problem solvers. When faced with something they didn't understand, their first instinct was to take it apart and figure out how it worked. While other species might spend years carefully studying alien technology, humans simply started experimenting immediately. Team 3, Johnson called. What have you learned about their shield generators? Engineer Kelly Wright looked up from her workstation. The energy field operates on a resonance frequency, sir. If we can match that frequency, we should be able to disrupt their shields completely. How long to build a weapon that can do that? Already done, sir. Wright held up a device the size of a baseball. I've modified one of our standard electromagnetic pulse grenades. This should disable Imperial shields for about 30 seconds. Johnson smiled. 30 seconds was more than enough time for human weapons to destroy an Imperial ship. Excellent. Get that design to our manufacturing stations immediately. Throughout the Sol system, similar scenes were playing out. Human engineers were taking apart captured Imperial equipment, figuring out how it worked, and then building better versions. What should have taken years was happening in hours. The humans had several advantages that the Empire hadn't expected. First, human manufacturing was distributed throughout their system rather than concentrated on a few worlds. Every station, every ship, every major installation had the ability to build and modify equipment quickly. Second, humans had spent decades studying Imperial technology through long-range sensors and captured communications. They already understood the basics, principles behind most Imperial devices. All they needed were working examples to fill in the details. Most importantly, humans approached technology differently than most species. Where aliens saw complex systems that required careful study, humans saw puzzles that could be solved through trial and error. Sergeant Tim Clark led his Special Forces team through the wreckage of an Imperial transport that had crash-landed near Denver. His mission was simple: capture as much alien equipment as possible and get it to the research teams. "Sergeant," called Private Danny Torres, "I found something interesting." Clark examined the device Torres had discovered. It looked like a standard Imperial communication unit, but something was different about it. "What makes this one special?" "It's still transmitting, sir. Still connected to the Imperial command network." Clark felt a surge of excitement. A working connection to Imperial communications could provide enormous advantages. "Get that to Agent Clark immediately. Tell her it's priority 1. Back at her command center, Nina Clark received the captured communications device with great interest. If her teams could crack Imperial encryption, they might be able to monitor enemy communications in real time. "How long?" she asked her top cryptographer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Kim was already connecting the device to her analysis computers. Imperial encryption is sophisticated, but they made one critical mistake. They assumed no one would ever capture one of their active communication units. "Give me 2 hours." While human scientists worked to understand Imperial technology, human pilots were learning to fight Imperial ships more effectively. Captain Bobby Martinez led a squadron of modified human fighters against an Imperial patrol near Saturn. "Remember," Martinez told his pilots, "their ships are faster and more heavily armed than ours, but they're also bigger and less maneuverable. Use that against them." Martinez's fighters were no longer the simple vessels that had first encountered the Imperial fleet. Human engineers had been upgrading them throughout the battle, adding captured Imperial weapons and improved shield generators. Each fighter was now a hybrid of human and alien technology. The Imperial patrol consisted of 6 ships, each one larger and more powerful than Martinez's entire squadron. Under normal circumstances, the human fighters wouldn't stand a chance. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Attack pattern Delta," Martinez ordered. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to capture them." The human fighters moved in a coordinated swarm around the Imperial ships. Instead of engaging in direct combat, they used hit-and-run tactics to disable key systems. Electromagnetic pulse weapons knocked out Imperial shields. Precision strikes damaged engines and weapon systems. Within minutes, the Imperial ships were helpless. "Boarding teams, go," Martinez commanded. Human soldiers used captured Imperial technology to teleport directly onto the enemy ships. The aliens found themselves fighting in their own corridors against enemies who understood their technology better than they did. Back on Earth, General Troy Adams was coordinating the most ambitious part of the human plan. His teams were not just defending Earth. They were launching counterattacks against Imperial positions throughout the system. "Status report," Adams requested. Captain Lisa Morgan consulted her displays. Operation Reverse Engineering is ahead of schedule, sir. Our teams have successfully captured and analyzed Imperial technology from 17 different ship classes. We're now producing hybrid weapons that combine the best of both technologies. Adams nodded with satisfaction. This was the key to human strategy, not just defeating the Empire, but learning from them. Every Imperial weapon captured made human forces stronger. Every alien ship destroyed provided new technology to study. What about the counteroffensive? Phase 1 is complete, sir. Human forces have successfully captured Imperial bases on Europa and Titan. We're now using their own weapons against them. The most remarkable example of human adaptability was happening aboard the captured Imperial cruiser Dominance. Engineer Sam Porter had led a team that successfully boarded and captured the vessel intact. Now, human technicians were learning to operate an Imperial warship. Porter called Admiral Mitchell through the communication system. "What's your status?" Porter looked around the alien bridge, where human technicians were rapidly learning to operate Imperial controls. "We've figured out their basic systems, Admiral. Weapons, shields, engines, everything is operational under human control. How long until you can use it in battle?" "We're ready now, sir. Within hours of capturing the Imperial cruiser, human crews were operating it as effectively as its original alien crew. The ship's weapons were now pointed at other Imperial vessels, and its advanced sensors were providing intelligence about enemy positions throughout the system. Admiral Morrison watched his tactical display with growing horror. Not only were the humans fighting more effectively than expected, they were actually getting stronger as the battle continued. Every Imperial ship lost made the human forces more dangerous. "Sir," reported Captain Brooks, "the humans are now using our own technology against us. That cruiser we lost this morning is now firing on our ships with Imperial weapons." Morrison felt a cold realization settle over him. The humans weren't just defending their system. They were learning from every engagement, adapting to every tactic, improving their capabilities in real time. "How is this possible?" Morrison demanded. "No species can master alien technology this quickly." The answer came from Dr. Helen Carter, still broadcasting to both fleets. "Admiral Morrison, you're seeing something that makes humans unique in the galaxy. We don't just fight to survive, we fight to learn. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every enemy teaches us something new." Morrison realized that he was facing something the Empire had never encountered before. An enemy that actually benefited from being attacked. The longer this battle continued, the more dangerous the humans became. Admiral Morrison stood alone on his bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed the destruction of his once mighty fleet. In 6 hours of battle, he had lost over 100 ships. The humans had lost fewer than 20. His ground forces were trapped on hostile planets, and his remaining ships were being hunted by an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. "Admiral," Captain Brooks said quietly, "perhaps it's time to consider withdrawal." Morrison turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Withdrawal? The Empire does not retreat from primitive worlds." "Sir, these humans are not primitive. They've demonstrated capabilities that exceed our intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude." Morrison knew Brooks was right, but he also knew what retreat would mean. The Emperor would not forgive a failed conquest, especially one that had cost so many ships. Morrison's career, his life, possibly the lives of his entire crew would be forfeit if he returned to Imperial space in defeat. "There is another option," Morrison said slowly. Brooks felt a chill run down her spine. She recognized the tone in Morrison's voice. "Admiral, what are you considering?" "The Dominion's Edge carries a planet-killer weapon. One shot could destroy Earth completely." The bridge fell silent. Every officer present understood the implications of what Morrison was suggesting. Planet-killer weapons were forbidden except in the most extreme circumstances. They were meant to be used against uninhabited worlds that posed some kind of cosmic threat, not against living civilizations. "Sir," Brooks said carefully, "the use of planet-killer weapons against inhabited worlds is prohibited by Imperial law. The Emperor himself would—" "The Emperor will understand when I explain that these humans represent a threat to the entire Empire," Morrison interrupted. "They've demonstrated the ability to turn our own technology against us. If they're allowed to survive, they could spread that knowledge to other species." Brooks looked around the bridge at the other officers. She could see the same concern in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Morrison was talking about committing genocide against an entire species because he couldn't accept defeat in battle. "Admiral," she tried again, "perhaps we should attempt negotiation. The humans have offered to let us leave their system peacefully." Morrison's laugh was bitter. "Leave peacefully? After losing 100 ships? What kind of message would that send to the rest of the galaxy? No, Captain. If we cannot conquer these humans, we must destroy them completely." Morrison activated the ship's intercom system. "All hands, prepare for planet-killer weapon deployment. Target, Earth." Throughout the ship, Imperial officers looked at each other with shock and dismay. Many of them had families on conquered worlds. They understood that the line between conqueror and destroyer was one that, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. In the weapon control room, Chief Engineer Laura White received the activation order with growing horror. She had helped design the planet-killer weapon years ago, back when it seemed like a theoretical deterrent rather than something that would actually be used. "Chief," asked her assistant, Lieutenant Mark Stevens, "are we really going to destroy an entire planet?" White looked at the weapon control panel. One button press would charge the massive device. A second press would fire it, sending a beam of energy capable of cracking a planet's core. Within hours, Earth would be nothing but floating debris. "Chief White," came Morrison's voice through the intercom, "begin charging sequence immediately." White hesitated. Throughout her career, she had followed orders without question. But this felt different. This felt wrong. "Chief?" Stevens asked quietly. White made a decision that would change everything. Instead of activating the planet-killer weapon, she reached for the communication panel. "This is Chief Engineer White. I need to speak with Agent Clark on the secure channel." Moments later, Nina Clark's voice came through White's private communications system. "Chief White, we've been expecting your call." "You've been expecting it?" "We've been monitoring Imperial communications for hours. We know about Admiral Morrison's planet-killer order. We also know that you're the only person who can activate the weapon." White felt confused and frightened. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we have allies aboard your ship, Chief. People who believe that genocide is wrong, regardless of which uniform they wear." White looked around the weapon control room. Several of her technicians were listening to the conversation, their faces showing a mixture of relief and determination. She realized that she wasn't the only Imperial officer who had serious doubts about Morrison's orders. "What do you want me to do?" White asked. "We need you to do something very specific with the planet-killer weapon," Clark explained. "Instead of firing it at Earth, we need you to redirect it at coordinates we'll provide." "Redirect it where?" "At the Imperial fleet." White felt shock run through her body. "You want me to fire on our own ships?" Chief White, Admiral Morrison is about to commit genocide against 4 billion innocent people. Your choice is simple. Help us stop him, or become part of the greatest war crime in galactic history. White looked at her technicians. Every one of them was nodding. These were good people, engineers and scientists who had joined the Imperial fleet to explore the galaxy, not to destroy inhabited worlds. "What exactly do you need me to do?" White asked. Clark's instructions were precise and detailed. Instead of firing the planet killer at Earth, White would redirect it at specific coordinates within the Imperial fleet itself. The weapon would destroy Morrison's ship and several others, crippling the Empire's remaining offensive capability. "But Chief," Stevens whispered, "we'll be killing thousands of Imperial soldiers and saving billions of human civilians." White replied, "Sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones." White began implementing Clark's instructions. The planet killer weapon charged normally, its massive energy collectors drawing power from the ship's core. But instead of targeting Earth, the weapon was being subtly redirected toward Morrison's own fleet. On the bridge, Admiral Morrison watched the charging sequence with satisfaction. "How long until we can fire, Captain Brooks?" Brooks checked her instruments, unaware of what was happening in the weapon control room. 15 minutes, sir." "Excellent. Send a message to the human leadership. Tell them they have 15 minutes to surrender unconditionally, or we will destroy their planet." The message was transmitted throughout the Sol system. On Earth, in underground bunkers and command centers, human leaders received Morrison's ultimatum with grim determination. Dr. Helen Carter responded immediately. "Admiral Morrison, we will not surrender, but we want you to know that your planet killer weapon will not fire on Earth." Morrison felt a surge of anger. "Dr. Carter, you're bluffing. There's nothing you can do to stop us." "Actually, Admiral, there is. You see, not everyone in your fleet agrees with your decision to commit genocide. Some of your officers still remember the difference between conquest and murder." Morrison felt the first stirring of real fear. "What are you talking about?" "Check your weapon control room, Admiral." Morrison immediately contacted Chief White. "Chief, what's your status?" There was a long pause before White responded. "Admiral, I cannot and will not fire this weapon at an inhabited planet. The planet killer has been redirected." "Redirected? Where?" "At the Dominion's edge, sir. At your ship." Morrison felt the deck shake beneath his feet as the massive weapon reached full charge. Through the bridge windows, he could see the barrel of the planet killer weapon slowly turning toward his own position. "White!" Morrison screamed. "I order you to redirect that weapon at Earth immediately." "I'm sorry, Admiral," White replied calmly, "but some orders should never be followed." The planet killer weapon fired, sending a beam of energy more powerful than a star directly at the heart of the Imperial fleet. Admiral Morrison had just enough time to understand that his own weapon was about to destroy him before the Dominions. Edge and 12 other Imperial ships vanished in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth. Commander Tony Hayes sat alone in a small holding cell aboard the human station New Hope. He was the highest-ranking Imperial officer to survive the destruction of the fleet. Around him, the station hummed quietly with activity as humans worked to process the surrendering remnants of what had once been the mighty Fourth Galactic Empire's invasion force. 3 days had passed since Admiral Morrison's death. Of the 300 ships that had arrived at Earth, fewer than 50 remained operational. Most of their crews had surrendered immediately after Morrison's flagship was destroyed. They had seen enough of human capability to know that further resistance was pointless. The door to Hayes's cell opened, and Dr. Helen Carter entered. She looked tired but peaceful, like someone who had just completed a long and difficult task. Behind her came General Kathy Lewis, Earth's senior military commander. "Commander Hayes," Dr. Carter said, taking a seat across from him. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us." Hayes looked at the two women who had somehow orchestrated the defeat of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "I didn't have much choice. My ship is in your hands, my crew is your prisoner, and my empire, well, I suspect my empire no longer exists." General Lewis nodded. "You're partially correct. The Fourth Galactic Empire still exists, but it's in the process of collapse. Word of your defeat here has spread throughout your territory. Dozens of worlds have already declared independence. Your emperor is facing rebellions on multiple fronts." Hayes felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The empire had been his entire life, but he had also seen what it had become under leaders like Morrison. "How did you know the empire would collapse after one defeat?" Dr. Carter smiled slightly. "Because we've seen it happen before, Commander. This isn't the first galactic empire to ignore the warnings about Earth." Hayes leaned forward with interest. Throughout the battle, he had heard references to previous empires, but he had assumed they were myths or propaganda. "You're serious? There were really other empires before ours?" "3 of them," General Lewis confirmed. "The first galactic empire lasted for over 2,000 years. When they discovered Earth, we were just emerging from what you might call our medieval period. We had swords and horses, not spaceships." "What happened to them?" Dr. Carter stood and walked to the small window that showed Earth in the distance. "The same thing that's happening to your empire, Commander. They underestimated us." Hayes felt confused. "But if you were medieval, how could you possibly defeat a galactic empire?" "We didn't defeat them in open battle," Lewis explained. "We did something much more effective. We learned from them." Dr. Carter turned back to face Hayes. "Commander, let me tell you the real history of Earth and why the Keepers warned your empire to stay away." Hayes settled back to listen, genuinely curious about what he was about to hear. "When the first empire found Earth," Dr. Carter began, "humans were indeed primitive by galactic standards. But we had one advantage that the empire didn't recognize. We were incredibly good at adapting and learning. Instead of trying to fight the empire directly, we studied them. For 50 years, humans served the first empire as a conquered species. But during that time, we learned everything we could about their technology, their government, their military tactics. We sent human agents to other conquered worlds, where they learned even more." General Lewis continued the story. "Eventually, humans began to understand that the empire had a fundamental weakness. It was too large to govern effectively. It relied on fear and superior technology to control thousands of different species across vast distances. So we started a different kind of war," Dr. Carter said. "Not a war of conquest, but a war of ideas. Humans began spreading concepts of independence and self-determination to other species. We shared the technology we had learned. We helped coordinate rebellions." Hayes was beginning to understand. "You destroyed the first empire from within." "It took us 200 years," Lewis confirmed. "But eventually, the first empire collapsed under the weight of countless rebellions that we had helped organize and support. The species that had been conquered became free, and humans became their friends and allies rather than their conquerors." Dr. Carter sat back down. "The Second Empire arose about 1,000 years later. They had learned from the First Empire's mistakes and were more careful about controlling conquered species. But they made the same fundamental error. They underestimated humans. By that time, Lewis explained, humans had developed much more advanced technology. We had spread to hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. When the Second Empire tried to conquer us, they found that humans weren't confined to just one planet anymore. The war with the Second Empire lasted 300 years, Dr. Carter continued. But the result was the same. Human agents infiltrated their government, their military, their technology centers. We learned everything they knew, then used that knowledge to help other species rebel. Hayes felt a growing sense of amazement. And the Third Empire was the most advanced of all, Lewis said. They had technology that was almost magical. They could destroy stars, create artificial life, manipulate time itself. When they found Earth again, they were confident that no species could resist them. But they made the same mistake as their predecessors, Dr. Carter explained. They assumed that military superiority meant certain victory. They didn't understand that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of turning strong enemies into defeated ones. The Third Empire lasted only 50 years after they encountered humans, Lewis said. By then, we had learned to work so effectively with other species that the entire galaxy rose up against the Empire simultaneously. Hayes stared at the two women in growing understanding. You're saying that humans have destroyed 3 galactic empires? Not destroyed, Dr. Carter corrected. Liberated. Every species that was enslaved by those empires became free. Every world that was conquered became independent. Humans didn't replace those empires. We helped everyone become equal partners in a galactic community. Lewis stood and walked to a star chart on the wall. Commander Hayes, your Fourth Empire controlled over 1,000 worlds when you arrived here. How many of those worlds do you think joined the Empire voluntarily? Hayes thought about it. Very few. Most were conquered. Exactly. And now that your empire has been defeated, those worlds are remembering what freedom feels like. They're declaring independence not because humans are forcing them to, but because they want to be free. Dr. Carter looked directly at Hayes. This is why Earth was forbidden, Commander. Not because humans are the most powerful species in the galaxy, but because we're the most dangerous to tyrants and conquerors. We don't just defeat empires. We show other species that empires can be defeated. Hayes felt the weight of this revelation settle over him. The Keepers of the Void, they were trying to protect my empire from this fate. The Keepers are among the oldest species in the galaxy, Lewis explained. They've watched this cycle repeat 4 times now. They warn each new empire about Earth, hoping that someone will finally learn to coexist with humans instead of trying to conquer us. But each empire makes the same mistake, Dr. Carter added. They see a small blue planet with primitive-looking inhabitants, and they think it will be an easy conquest. They never realize that humans have had thousands of years to perfect the art of defeating galactic empires. Hayes looked out the window at Earth again. The planet looked so peaceful, so ordinary. It was hard to believe that this small world had toppled 4 galactic empires. What happens now? Hayes asked. To me? To my crew? To what's left of the empire? General Lewis smiled. Now, Commander, you have a choice. You can return to what remains of your empire and try to hold it together through force. Or you can stay here and help us build something better. What do you mean? Dr. Carter stood up. We mean a galactic community where species work together as equals instead of one group ruling over all the others. Your empire is collapsing, but the species that made it up, don't have to remain enemies. They can become partners. Hayes thought about Admiral Morrison and the path that had led to this moment. The Empire's arrogance, its assumption of superiority, its willingness to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. Then he thought about the humans who had defeated them not through cruelty or conquest, but through patience, intelligence, and an unwavering belief in freedom. "I'd like to stay," Hayes said quietly. "I'd like to help build something better." Dr. Carter smiled. "Welcome to the galactic community, Commander Hayes. Earth is no longer a forbidden zone. It's a beacon of hope for anyone who believes that freedom is stronger than conquest." Outside the window, Earth continued its ancient rotation, a small, blue world that had taught the galaxy that the greatest power was not the ability to conquer, but the wisdom to liberate.